Heaven sent.
In the realms of gaming and its many different iconic characters, I think it's safe to say that the majority of people can recognize this face right here. Sonic the Hedgehog, being one of the highest grossing gaming franchises of all time, has more than paid its dues throughout its vast catalog of releases. From the very first entry in the series on the Sega Genesis selling over 15 million copies worldwide, to Sonic Adventure being the highest selling game on the Dreamcast, it's been a gaming franchise that has not only been highly influential, but has become a staple for one legendary game studio in particular. That studio being Sega Corporation. And while Sega is the primary subject of this video, all of our talk about Sonic is going to surprisingly end right there, as we're going to be diving into the world of more obscure and strange titles that have come to fruition throughout the wide variety of Sega's catalog, even more specifically on the Dreamcast. So make sure you bring plenty of fish food and get ready to brush up on your reflexes as we dive into the strange and mesmerizing world of Sega games. Throughout the history of gaming, we've come to familiarize ourselves with the genre of rhythm and dance games. From the button-mashing stylings of Parappa the Rapper, getting loose on the DDR dance floor, to receiving a severe case of carpal tunnel from Guitar Hero, there have been more than enough titles that have provided us with plenty of fun rhythm-based gameplay. And while this is a less visited genre for most developers, I personally found some of these games to be some of the most fun I've ever had, especially when it comes to DDR. But in the 90s, this was new territory, and as with any new genre, we saw a decent amount of studios beginning to dip their toes into the realm of rhythm-based titles, most of which were primarily released on the PS1. But on a cold day in Japan, in December 16, 1999, Sega decided to heat things up and release their very own spin on the world of rhythm-based gaming, with Space Channel 5 on the Sega Dreamcast. Now, the initial release of Space Channel in Japan was a bit lackluster, with the game only selling less than half of its stock on the first week. While the game did eventually go on to double that number in Japan, it seemed as though Sega had decided to tighten things up and was much more ambitious with their North American launch. They even held a costume contest in Universal City, California, where they gave young women the opportunity to dress up as the main character of Space Channel 5, with the winner receiving a Sega Dreamcast and $500 cash for their prize. And I tell you what, I would have had no problem putting on a miniskirt and pink wig for that kind of gear. But anywho, this game eventually did very well worldwide and was released on multiple platforms such as the Game Boy Advance and PlayStation 2. But what was it about? Well, let me show you. Space Channel 5 begins with a strange cutscene in which a large group of aliens have invaded a spaceship terminal and are using ray guns to control and hold its patrons hostage. It then cuts to our main protagonist by the name of Ooh La La, receiving a transmission about these events, and that she's needed to investigate the situation. We arrive on the scene and come to find utter chaos in the terminal as the aliens are forcing their captives to dance. And the only hope for these people to be freed is for us to get our groove on as well. Ooh La La is instructed to copy the aliens' dance moves, and like a straight-to-DVD copy of You Got Served on Acid, the dance battle begins. Now, this isn't your typical rhythm-based game. As with most, you'll usually have some kind of guide to follow on what buttons to press and a visual on when to time them. With Space Channel 5, you purely rely on your memory and reflexes to progress. And I can't lie, it's pretty difficult.
This just isn't my day.
What are you doing?
Now, I played two different versions of Space Channel 5, the 2000 Sega Dreamcast version and the 2002 Special Edition for PS2. While both of these versions are pretty much identical, it almost felt like the PS2 version was more responsive and less punishing, as there were plenty of times I could have sworn I was hitting the right combinations on Dreamcast, but I was just coming up short at the end of every level.
The show's being canceled?
Either way, I probably just suck at the game. But regardless of difficulty, this game is really something else, and I absolutely love it. It holds a very 1960s Jetsons type of feel to it, mixed with those Y2K style aesthetics, and an excellent soundtrack really makes this game just so incredibly charming. But while you play, you really can't help but to notice just how damn weird it is. Now, Ooh La La's entire mission is to cover the story for her news channel, as well as to save the hostages from the alien invasion. And while you do this, each hostage you save will be added to your roster of backup dancers, who follow and dance along with you throughout your mission. This little detail makes the game that much more fun, and I honestly couldn't help but to move along the entire time I was playing it. Every song is just so catchy, and really keeps you in the zone while you dance your way through each level, and I especially loved how creative some of the boss battles were. Now, the original Dreamcast version had fared pretty well amongst critics at the time, with the only real complaint being the game's short length and lack of unlockables. And taking that into consideration, much more content including a whole new story mode were added in the PS2 version, as well as a massive wardrobe of unlockable outfits and a dancing survival mode, giving the game much more replayability. Many critics noted the infectious nature of the game's atmosphere and charm, and it was highly recommended for both casual and hardcore gamers alike. I'd always wanted to give this game a shot, as I had vaguely heard of it back in the day, but luckily thanks to this video, I can now call myself a solidified fan, and although this is only one example into the intriguing world of Sega, it's also a testament to how innovative and unique their games can be. But prepare yourself, because things are about to get a whole lot more strange with the next game on our list. But first, grab yourself a drink. You've got to be parched from all that dancing. For our next game, we're going to travel back about 65 million years into the past, back when a certain meteorite had made its way to Earth and completely devastated the dinosaur population. Well, maybe that's a little too far back. Let's go a bit forward actually, to the year of 2000. An earthquake alongside the Yucatan Peninsula has erupted over the very impact site of that ancient meteor we talked about. This creates an island, becoming what is known as Dinosaur Island, and is the location for an international biotech corporation by the name of Kimra. Ah yes, we've seen this one before. Sounds very Umbrella Corporation if you ask me. But anyways, the narrative of our game begins in the year of 2018, with our main protagonist Elliot Blade on a much needed getaway right off the coast of Dino Island. Elliot and his buddy Tim are anchored in their boat, when all of a sudden a small meteorite crashes into the island and creates a massive barrier surrounding the impact. This barrier traps Elliot's friend in its wake, and the situation becomes even more strange once a light source from the meteor turns into some sort of fairy-like creature. This entity connects with Elliot right before a swarm of aggressive flying pterodactyl-like creatures approach their boat with less than hospitable intention. This entity, later named Nephilim, guides Elliot to the island, which has now been overrun with both mutated animals and people. And with nowhere else to go, so begins our wacky adventure through Blue Stinger, a Sega Dreamcast exclusive that was both ambitious and just plain weird. Essentially, we're trapped on this island with no recollection of where we really are or how we're going to get off the island. But luckily enough, we soon meet up with an odd gentleman by the name of Dogs. Yes, dogs as in plural, as well as a lone security officer on the island named Janine, which Elliot is very fond of, by the way.
Phew, tough girl. I like it, Janine.
Who the hell is Janine?
My kind of girl, so stay away from her.
While playing through this game, I had a bit of an internal struggle about whether or not I was really enjoying it, but the longer I played, the more it kind of grew on me. Now I have to explain that this is a game that was technically only published by Sega in Japan, as Activision was put in charge of handling the Western release of Blue Stinger. But because of this game being so wacky and strange, I thought I could make an exception for it on this list. But anyways, there were actually different versions of the game depending on what region your copy was released in. For the Japanese version, it was designed with a third-person fixed camera perspective, much like Resident Evil, while the Western version makes use of a third-person camera that you're seeing in my gameplay right now. And while I think this was a solid move for the Western release, you can't help but to see a lot of that Resident Evil influence in this game. You've got the inventory management, healing items, and even limited ammo. But that's not to say that Blue Stinger doesn't stand on its own 2 feet, because it damn sure does. And for someone who's played a lot of different games such as I, this one was for sure an interesting find. Starting with the visuals, the game has that very nostalgic Dreamcast look that so many Sega fans have grown to love. The environments can be a bit claustrophobic at times, especially in the Lab Town section of the game. But other than a few strange areas, it's an extremely appealing game to look at. What's really interesting about the game is that it's set around Christmas time, and while it may not be snowing or have the most festive appearance on Dino Island, the Kimra Corp have been doing some serious holiday decorating, which is very apparent once you reach the town area. The walls are littered with decorations of holiday cheer, screens depicting Saint Nick himself, and this absolutely unbearable Christmas song is just blaring in the background the whole time. which at first I thought it was a nice touch, but it quickly began to drive me absolutely insane. I mean, just take a listen.
Got it. We're on our way.
Devlin, the manager, has a key. That is, if he's still alive.
Yeah, it's that bad. But all music aside, I did really enjoy the level design of the game, as it included a few interesting finds such as a video rental store. But why the hell does a burger cost so much on this island? I mean, that's just ridiculous. But it was a little nice experience to explore the game's world and soak in its strange atmosphere. And while it can be a bit backtrack heavy at times, I personally didn't mind it too much. Now, the game was classified as a cinematic action horror experience by Shinya Nishigaki, the creator and developer of Blue Stinger, but he wanted the game to also be set apart from most other survival horror type games of that era, giving it a much more humorous or campy feel to it, which is very obvious in its goofy dialogue.
Saved my life? You guys are rescuers? How many are saved? Is Devlin alive?
Chill, one question at a time.
Okay.
It's overall a very strange game, but luckily enough, it holds plenty enough charm to keep you playing through its interesting storyline. It's your typical tale of corporations and their experiments going horribly wrong, but it was done in a way that's still captivating, and any true gamer owes it to themselves to give it a playthrough. While the game initially didn't sell too well in Japan, it's now seen as a cult classic for many Western gamers and Dreamcast enthusiasts. It's a great representation for how unique and interesting a lot of games from this era could be, and I'm glad I was able to experience it for myself in this video. But we've got a lot more to discuss, and plenty more to see as we embark on our interesting journey through Sega and their wacky ideas. But when it comes to strange concepts, I think this next game has got to be a top 10. So make sure to put on your rain boots. This next game is going to get a bit seamany. Now, throughout the many advances of gaming technology, we've seen a wide variety of different peripherals being used for a variety of reasons. We've got the PlayStation 2's infamous iToy, the NES and its underwhelming Power Glove controller, and don't forget the Dreamcast fishing rod. These were all some pretty ambitious pieces of tech for their time periods, but what about something a bit more simple, such as a microphone? Well, before we all were accustomed to having a headset on our heads 24/7, we used to hear the majority of our games through the speakers of our television. And with online play being much more scarce for console gaming in the late 90s to early 2000s, it was a rare occurrence that a game would be in need of any type of voice interaction. But when it was needed, it tended to get weird. Take for example the PlayStation 2's survival horror spectacle, Lifeline. This was a game in which you used a microphone and voice recognition to command your character throughout the game. And while it was deemed to dish out some pretty hilarious moments at times, most people have more complaints than praises for this game. But surprisingly, it wasn't the first game to come up with this idea. Just a couple of years earlier, on August 9th, 2000, the Dreamcast had released their debut title into the world of voice interactive gaming, with Seaman. Yeah. So a little bit of backstory on this game. It was developed by Vivarium Games and published by Sega in North America. The game's producer, Yute Saito, had initially came up with the idea of Seaman through a concept he had shared with a coworker. His buddy had been creating a tropical fish simulator, which inspired Saito to put his own unique spin on that concept. After discussing the concept with Nintendo's very own Shigeru Miyamoto, who actually played a major part in development of the game, all systems were a go, and Seaman was well on its way to coming full circle. No pun intended. The game was originally going to be designed for the Nintendo 64 and its VRU system, but eventually they found that the Sega Dreamcast would be a much more suitable candidate. This offer to make the Dreamcast title was extended to the vice president of Sega and was quickly accepted, as he felt the game's concept would help to make the Dreamcast a leading seller of consoles. And so, things set into motion for development of Seaman and its incredibly unique concept. They wanted to design a game in which you raised, fed, and nurtured your very own creature. You would be in charge of keeping it company and even be able to have conversations with it. The game was designed to operate in real time, meaning you would have to check in on your virtual pet every day in order to ensure that it's being fed and given the attention that it needs. which seems like a lot of responsibility to put on somebody at a young age. But hey, with that kind of dedication, I'm sure that most Seaman players grow up to be highly successful, or involved in some very strange fetishes. But anywho, at the beginning of the game, the player is given an unhatched egg, and are expected to guide this egg through a series of different development stages. The Seaman essentially begins as a type of parasite, and once it's eaten, it overtakes its prey and starts to take on a much more physical form, such as the Gilman. At this point, your pet will be much more sentient and will even attempt to speak. I should also mention that during this process, you will have hatched multiple creatures into your aquarium, but most will be killed off until only 2 remain. Oh nature, such a wholesome woman you are. Your creature will remain genderless until it reaches a certain age. At that point, whatever you name it will affect its color and sex, whether it's a sea man or a sea woman. Once your creature reaches its final stages in life, it will give birth to other seaman and start the process all over again, giving you the infinite task of babysitting essentially. Now what made this game so incredibly strange and unique was its use of voice recognition. For example, when you would speak your birth date to your seaman, it would recite facts that were correlated with your birthday. It could hold conversations with you, as well as give you some foreboding statements about the future.
That's all terrific, but pretty soon people won't even need to leave their homes in order to conduct their daily business. You humans are going to get lazier and less mobile, and forget how to deal with each other face to face. I think things could get pretty ugly a few decades down the road. Do you think the internet is dangerous?
Wow, that was both depressing and true. Thanks, Seaman. As you can probably imagine, people didn't really know what to expect from this game, but the end product was actually incredibly successful. Seaman had sold almost 400,000 copies on the Sega Dreamcast, making it the 3rd best-selling game on the console, was met with critical acclaim, and even nominated for an award on Console Innovation. It's a beyond strange concept, and even somewhat creepy at times, but it's games like these that really made a mark on history for their ambitious nature and willingness to try something out of the ordinary. And while the game was successful and somewhat of a sequel was released on the PlayStation 2, I think it would be pretty cool to have this game ported over to PC for modern day gamers to enjoy, or maybe even have a whole new game developed. It's weird games like these that make me miss the earlier days of gaming, when developers were really just throwing crazy ideas out there and just seeing what would stick. But luckily, we've got plenty of indie developers to rely on for our fix nowadays. But enough on that. We've still got 2 more games to talk about on this list, and I think our next one is going to be one that you're very familiar with. So get ready to strap on your rollerblades and put on some of your favorite tunes as we dive into the stylish world of Jet Set Radio. Released on July 29th, 2000 for the Sega Dreamcast, Jet Set Radio is a game that is widely known for its incredible visual style, as well as its ambitious game mechanics. But what stands out most of all in JSR is the immense amount of style that is found within it. From the characters to the music, the flashy graffiti and the bustling environments, every inch of this game feels like it's living and breathing in a way that is incredibly mesmerizing. It's the kind of game where you could just kick off your shoes, put on some headphones, and get lost in its addictive gameplay for hours to come. Now my first experience with the JSR series was at the tender age of 9, when I had gotten my first Xbox, and at that time Microsoft was including a 2-disc promo game with the Xbox console, featuring both Sega GT and Jet Set Radio Future. Now for the longest time I hadn't even known of Jet Set Radio, or Jet Grind Radio depending on your region, and had only just gotten the chance to play it for the first time while making this video. Safe to say, I'm terrible at it. The mechanics were a bit more difficult than its sequel, and I honestly just had a hard time maneuvering the character. But I'm only prefacing this because all of the footage I got is an obvious struggle, with me trying to move around each level. But all that aside, the game's incredible, and I can only imagine playing it back at its 2000 release. The plot is much like the sequel. You and your ragtag team of rollerblading graffiti artists are in a turf war, with multiple other street gangs around the city. Not to mention, the entire city is also being overtaken by a corporate suit, wanting to put an end to all the mayhem. But we won't let those suits come between our quest for supremacy, oh no. You get the option between which character you'd like to play before a level, each with their own unique stats and style. You'll spend most of your time searching for rival tags to paint over, looking for hidden paint cans, and just plain grooving to the amazing soundtrack that the game provides. And while I wouldn't exactly say this game fits the level of strange that has been apparent with other games on our list, it definitely has something intriguing about its aura. Like I said, this is much more of an experience than your average game, and has a pull to it that really draws you in. It's a sweet mix of Y2K aesthetic with a dash of cyberpunk atmosphere. The soundtrack is a great mix of funk, drum and bass, as well as hip hop, which makes for an excellent homage to the graffiti culture this game is heavily inspired by. It's a title that shouldn't be missed by gamers of any age, generation, or preference, as it really is one of those games that stands out alone for its creativity. I could say a lot more, but I'll leave it up to you to find out for yourself. Because now, it's time for us to take a journey into the vast blue waters of the ocean, as we come to discover my favorite game on this list. So get your flippers ready and prepare to take a swim as we dive into the deeply beautiful world of Echo the Dolphin. Taking things back to the wonderful year of 1992, Sega was doing incredibly well for themselves. The success of the Sega Genesis was undeniable at its time, boasting many original titles of gaming IPs that we still love in present day. But there was one certain game that really stood out for its relaxing atmosphere and stimulating gameplay. That game being Echo the Dolphin. A game in which you literally play as a dolphin who finds himself on a mission through time and space, after his friends are sucked into a vortex, leaving Echo to solve the mystery of what happened. The gameplay consisted of solving puzzles, communicating with other creatures, and exploring the deep sea in search of answers. And while this is a classic game and fared incredibly well among critics, it's only an introduction for the game we're really here to talk about, that being the final entry in the series, Echo, Defender of the Future. Now when it comes to the wide range of different concepts that Sega have come up with in their games, something about this one really just stood out to me. It was a game that I had sadly missed out on as a youth, and while I was searching for unique games to include in this video, I had come across this one, with a bit of reluctance. Upon looking at just the cover art, I figured it would just be another child's game. You know, simple gameplay, cutesy characters and cutscenes. But boy was I wrong. This game is really something special, and I was extremely blown away by how well it was designed for a game that was released in the year 2000. The game begins a bit reminiscent of the original, with Echo and his buddies just enjoying a day in the water. During this intro, you'll learn to use your echolocation to communicate with other creatures, as well as the many different mechanics that Echo can use to maneuver and defend himself. After this, the Earth is all of a sudden attacked by an alien species called the Foe, and have damaged its defense system named the Guardian. Echo is called upon to heal the Guardian and restore the world back to its original state. But it's not going to be easy, and it definitely shows in the gameplay. I came upon this game thinking it would be just another relaxing puzzle-based game that I could breeze through, but I came to be very mistaken for that. This game is hard, and when I say you gotta use your brain, just know I was doing a lot of Googling. But the difficulty is what makes it that much more rewarding, as you really do feel the weight of Echo's situation, to have the entire world resting on your flippers, in hopes of salvation. It's a lot to handle, especially when you don't even have legs. But anyways, as you can probably tell, this game is a lot deeper than you'd expect, and while it definitely holds a strange narrative for its story, the game really shines in its incredible atmosphere. From the very moment you begin playing, you'll come to find how visually stunning this game is. Pairing these stunning visuals with the beautiful ambient soundtrack in the background, it's pure bliss, man. On a side note, I was actually having a bit of a rough day when I had first sat down to play this game, and after a few hours of exploring the seascapes, taking in the ambient sounds, and communicating with the many colorful creatures of Echo's universe, it was amazing how much more relaxed I felt. I was curious about if anyone else who had played this game had also experienced the same type of relief, and I was pretty shocked to see a lot of other people saying the same things. And while this game definitely has its flaws with a lack of guidance for most objectives and some very frustrating battle mechanics, Echo is a game that I can't recommend enough to those who have yet to play it, as this game really begins to go as deep as the ocean depths the further you continue to play, and will really surprise you with how complex the game can be at times. But I definitely recommend a walkthrough on your first play, as the game can be pretty confusing. But if you're in need of a quick vacation with plenty of exploration, then Echo is the game for you. It's a strange concept that I felt was executed very well, and while the story may be a bit hard to follow at times, I commend Sega for being so ambitious and creating something as unique as Echo. It's an adventure that can be fun for gamers of all ages, and is one that is sure to be remembered for many generations to come. Wow, that was a lot of fun, but as all things must come to an end, so shall this video. And I hope you all enjoyed watching just as much as I enjoyed playing some of these unique games. And also a big shout out to MKM Features for allowing me the Seaman gameplay on this video. And everyone make sure to go check out their channel as well. Great content. And I just want to thank you guys all so much for all the support you've shown the channel and getting us to 4K subs. I'm still in amazement with how fast this channel is continuing to grow, and I'm just having so much fun getting acquainted with all you guys. I've got a lot more content in store, so please be sure to stick around for the next video. It's gonna be a spicy one. But until next time, my name is Vincent, and I hope to see you in the next video. Please stay blessed, stay safe, and take care. Peace out.